Mm.
You know, in life, people also supposed to be the yes. You know, when a person has an opportunity to help somebody do something good, to be a yes person. You know what I'm saying? It's very
Mhm.
easy to say no. I once had a guy who I asked something, a certain favor for something, you know, whatever it was. So he said, Rabbi Friedman, I know how to say no in 100 languages, but I'm not going to say no to you on that one. How do you like that? You know, meaning whatever. He was a good man. I mean, sometimes you have to say no to certain things, whatever his position, his type of work that he was involved with, whatever it was, he had to be able to say no for whatever it was. But at the end of the day, to be able to say yes, that's where it's at.
There's an old saying, you have to know when to hold them and you have to know when to fold them.
Right. But when it comes to helping, doing a mitzvah, doing a good deed, the natural instinct needs to be yes. Okay, but I
Mm.
can't do it. I can't do it. You know, but the
Mhm.
what is the natural? What where is the heart? What's your response? Okay, that's the big list. That's how we have to have in life. Okay, we are on 51A, or probably 51A2. We're up to Amalei Rav Nachman Ladora Avdei. Rav Nachman said to Doro, his servant. This is page 51A2, first column, right, Adam? 51A2, first column. Oh, Rachel Dora Avdei. Rav Nachman the Doro, his servant. Atmanli Soneh. You know, you should insulate some cold food for me, which would mean, which we could understand, according to one shot, according to Rashi, he wants to keep the food cold. So he wants to, because it's hot, it's a hot day. So he wants to keep the food cold. So he says, insulate the cold food, wrap it on all sides. The ice the achim kfei l'armot. If you want to send to the group, Adam, then we're on. Not only should you wrap, insulate, now it's Shabbat. Now we said on Shabbat you can't insulate food to keep food warm, but can you insulate food to keep food cold? So we said earlier that you're allowed to. We brought down, there was a dispute. Can you do that? Are we afraid if you insulate food to keep it cold, it might come to insulate food to keep it warm? And it seemed like the opinion was the old rabbi, whoa, look what's here, good morning, said that you can insulate the food to keep it
Mm.
um,
Cold.
cold. Remember, we talked about insulation. We're almost finished the perek. The next perek is going to talk about what an animal could go out on Shabbat with. You know, if animal
Right.
wants your animal, if it's going out on Shabbat, if it's going into public property, same way you can't carry, your animal can't carry. And we're going to talk about certain things that might be considered carrying for the animal. How do you like that? Your animal has to rest on Shabbat, Ralph. Ralph, your animal can't do work on Shabbat. You have to make sure you keep those animals inside on Shabbat. They can't be plowing, threshing. They can't be carrying loads outside of public property, right? That's where you got to go ahead and here.
They have to excrete though.
Okay, but that's not carrying.
No.
Okay, God bless you. We have a special guest coming on Thursday here in the summertime. We are very excited about this. Okay, we got Mark Ashby is
I'm
here.
Mark.
Good morning, guys. Good morning, Ralph.
Okay, he's never a guest. He's a regular. He's a regular that happens to be away in deal. That's how we usually
Exactly.
look at Mark. Got that?
Exactly.
It's all
Exactly.
about
That's better.
it's all about mentality and how do you look at things and how do you look at right or wrong. Okay, so we had earlier the idea of insulating. Mark was here on Tuesday, insulating cold food, and we said in the Gemara earlier that the old rabbi said you're allowed to do that on Shabbat to keep it cold. And I saw in Shulchan Aruch that's only if you're insulating it with something which is not going to add heat. But if you're insulating with a type of material, I know we touched on that on Tuesday when Mark was here, but the Shulchan Aruch would say that you can't, obviously, if you want to keep it cold, but let's say you want to go ahead and the question is if you want to, whatever, the insulation of something that's cold is only allowed provided that you can wrap a food that's cold on Shabbat on all sides, as long as it's not the item that you're wrapping with does not add heat. Now, so here we have a rabbi who said, I want you to go ahead and insulate for cold food for me. Good morning, Simon. Bring me water that a non-Jew boiled, that he cooked up, water that the non-Jew cooked up. And we're talking about, there's no question of that. It's not that the pot was used that day, that he made pork in that pot, and now you're going to use that pot to boil up water. We're talking about let's say the non-Jew was using, was only used for water. And he said, could you go in and bring me water that a non-Jew cooked? We're talking about not on Shabbat, not that the non-Jew, you're not asking the non-Jew to cook water for you on Shabbat. You can't do that. But he's saying, bring me water that a non-Jew cooked during the weekdays, right? Now, there is a ruling, there's something called Bishul Akum. There's something called that if a non-Jew cooks food, I can't eat food that was cooked, right? Food that was cooked by a non-Jew is not allowed to be eaten, even if it's completely kosher, right? Therefore, it's a big issue in people's houses that people have. He's talking about pure water.
So wait a minute.
But but you're allowed to have the guy cook the water. We're going to see why. That's what he
Water,
told.
right, water, right. Water is for sure is okay.
Water is an exception. What's
Right.
here on Saturday? None of
My understanding is, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but my understanding is if a goy cooks water for himself, you could use it on Shabbat.
Okay, I mean, if he cooks it for himself because he wasn't cooking for you. Okay.
For me, like I'm in a hotel and they have the hot water there cooked today. I could have tea from it.
Okay. Because he didn't
agree with that?
Yeah, because he didn't. Let's say because he didn't do it for you, right? Let's say
doing it for the hotel guests, which is no goyim.
Right, but here the case is, it could be that it could even be on Shabbat if the guy did it. Let's say not for you. That could be true as well. But here the issue
that's what I mean. On Shabbat, I'm talking about.
Right. And so here the question, the Gemara is going to teach us the law that water cooked by a guy is not a problem it's not part of the enactment of Bishul Akum. It's not part of the enactment of the prohibition cooked by a guy, because one of the things that the rabbi said, the only time there's a problem for me to eat something that is cooked or drink something that's cooked by a Gentile is only if I could not have eaten it raw. Something that's edible without the Gentile only made something, he took something warm, something that was already cooked, and he warmed it up, like Simon's case, right? Or let's say you go on a plane and the non-Jew, and they double wrap it. You ordered a kosher meal with United Airlines, and they double wrapped it, and they double wrapped it, and they heated it up for you in the microwave, right? You could eat it. Why could you eat it? Even though the non-Jew heated it up for you, but it was already cooked before the non-Jew came to town. So the improvement by the non-Jew is very minimal. And since there's no issue of the kashrut, it's not a question that you put it into a microwave that's not kosher directly. Let's say it was double wrapped or it's sealed, that it didn't open, that the food didn't get exposed to the air of the microwave, then it's not a problem. So therefore, that's why the rabbi specifically wanted the non-Jew to do this, because he wanted to teach a lesson that this is not subject to the rule of Bishul Akum. It's not subject to the rule, and What's the reason for that? Because one of the main reasons why the rabbis enacted the prohibition of a non-Jew cooking food for you, because we know when people cook for you, it gets to your heart, it creates a certain type of appreciation um, to that person, and you might come to get close to that person, and you might come to lead to marriage, and it's a fence for intermarriage. It's a fence for intermarriage. Unbelievable fence, right? If I could go ahead and go to my neighbor. My neighbor is not Jewish, and they go ahead and they'll cook for me, and let's say everything will be kosher. Let's say, Rabbi, everything is kosher, every kosher ingredients, everything they cook for me, and let's say I somehow know that I could trust that everything is kosher, then there's a concern I might that appreciation and that feeling might lead to closeness and perhaps lead to marriage. But for the fact that I can't eat from their food that they cook for me, so that will keep a distance, a separation for me and them in that aspect. But that's only if they do something that's really of something of accomplishment, right? If they took something that was raw that I could not have eaten without them, and they brought it to a state of edibility. But if something was already edible without them, the water was edible or the chicken was edible because it already was cooked before Simon, right? Now they just went ahead and they warmed it up. That's not a problem. That's not part of the enactment of Bishop Akum. Also, if there's some sort of food item that's not significant type of item, an item that you would not put on the table of a king. It wouldn't go on the table of a king. It's something, kings will eat chicken, kings will eat these type of foods. But there are certain types of food, like junk type of food, or certain food that type of food that maybe you would call very poor type of food that the people of nobility won't eat. So if it's not a food that's really of something that's really of uniqueness, so then there's not the concern that you're going to have such appreciation for the non-Jew, because what they do for me, they made some junk type of food, they cook some food that would not be going on the table of a king. So therefore, that also would be one of those things that is not a problem. It's not subject to the rule. So right, as long as it's kosher, then it wouldn't be. I think there was a certain type of food. I don't remember which the food was that maybe they sent to the chef in England, the chef for the Queen, to say would they serve such a thing for the Queen. If they would never serve this on the menu of the Queen, so then it would be some type of food that's not called Ola al Shulchan Melachim, right? That's Oren, right? I said go on the Shulchan Melachim. The closest to the table of kings was in recent times Queen Elizabeth, right, Simon? There was a certain type of dignity and royalty. I don't know about the Prince Charles, the King Charles is on that level or not, but probably is also similar type of thing, I would say as well. A certain standard for a king. So the Gemara says, so the rabbi said, he told the servant, whose name was Doru, to insulate the cold food on Shabbat. And the other thing he said, it's interesting in the commentary over here, Mark, they talk about that. He said one commentary puts in during the weekdays, and one puts weekdays in some sort of parentheses. So we'll have to see. We'll look into that case. But here he says, "Bring me water that the non-Jewish person cooked up." Let's see what he says. Anybody says over here? Yeah. So one of the commentaries say. You see, it's interesting, Mark. Your question about the hot water and he says like this. Rashi states. Let's look at the Rashi's language. Rashi says Rashi puts in the idea that the baker, the non-Jew, cooked the water during the weekdays. Morning, Kevin. And the commentaries are bothered by what is forcing Rashi's hand. If the guy cooked the water during Shabbat, but he didn't cook it for the Jew, so what's the problem, Mark? Right? Is that your issue? Correct? So why is Rashi emphasizing that the second story, when he told his servant, Rashi says it was during the weekdays, right? That's the question. Good morning, Kevin, and good morning, Asaf. We're talking about the rabbi who told his servant to cook water for him. Bring me water and he told the servant, bring me water that the non-Jew cooked. And the question, Rashi says it was cooked during the weekdays. But we know a non-Jew can't cook for you on Shabbat. Even if he, on his own, he cooks for you on Shabbat, you can't use that water that he cooked. He did a malacha for you. But if he did it for himself, it should be all right, right? So why does Rashi say, so some want to say that Rashi, when he says weekday, Rashi says, because if he did it on Shabbat for the rabbi, that would be forbidden for the rabbi to drink. That's one idea. However, others learn that even if the non-Jew, morning. So Mark, so one opinion says that Rashi says it was weekday because Rashi is just trying to say that it wasn't Shabbat, because if it was Shabbat and the non-Jew cooked it for the Jew, that would be forbidden. Right. So by saying weekday, he just means to say it wasn't Shabbat when the guy did it. But if it was Shabbat and he did it for himself, the Jew would be able to drink it. However, the Beit Meir wants to say from Rashi, it implies that even if the guy cooked it for himself, the Jew would not be able to drink it on Shabbat. Now, why is that? So he brings he says there's an opinion of the Magen Avraham, the second opinion of Magen Avraham, that they were concerned that maybe you would come to go ahead and tell him to cook on Shabbat. So there is an opinion out there. We have to look more in the halacha. At least it's a second opinion. Sounds like it's a second opinion. Sounds like the first opinion would not hold that way. But there seems to be 51A2. There seems to be an opinion in the Magen Avraham. Magen Avraham is one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. At least the second opinion. Like I said, it might be the more stricter. Obviously, maybe the first opinion might not say it's a problem. But the second opinion sounds like he's concerned that if the guy on his own cooks for himself the water, perhaps we're afraid you're going to come to tell him. And we have to know, why are we more concerned about water? Is that just water that we're concerned? That's a separate looking into.
So if the guy is like cooking for Shabbat food, like sunny side egg, whatever, and it's kosher.
No, yeah, but then right. Because if the guy cooked for himself a sunny side egg and everything is kosher, and everything was kosher, you can't eat it because eggs is something that you can't eat. Generally, it's not eaten raw. Even though maybe the chazan, the cantors might eat. They say cantors eat raw eggs. It's good for their voice, supposedly, but it's not considered. It's not enough. The general public does not eat raw eggs, and therefore, if a non-Jew would cook for you a raw egg, even if he cooked it for himself, but the fact if this bishop go, even though because you're benefiting from something that he did.
But if it's item that you eat raw, you could.
Yes, if you could do as long as there's no
carrot. I eat a carrot raw.
What's that again?
I eat carrots raw.
Right, so then it's right. So then when technically, as long as there's no issue of kosher, meaning your maid in your house, if you have a maid, if you want anything that you could eat raw, anything you can eat raw, she could turn on the fire. But if anything, it might be good not to, sometimes you don't want them to get involved with the pots, with the fire, because you start. They don't know, they don't understand. We spoke about this. Once you start letting one thing, they're not rabbis. Your wife is the rabbi in the house. I mean, you're the rabbi, but you get what I'm saying. The best kashrut is in the house, because when the wife is learned and knows what kashrut is, she's going to be much better than the restaurants. Yes.
This bypass issue, let's say you have a blend, right? Just piece of metal on real fire. and you turn it on for Shabbat, right? Now on Shabbat, you go and walk, put it on. So there's no you can have issue for you because
But-
you turn the fire at the beginning.
But there's two.
No, you can't take it raw to cook.
Right. But the two.
Itself. Wait,
I said I can't eat that.
Again,
that's what I'm saying.
you can't- again, no. We said only because Mark's case is the water, because it could be, again, there's two different issues going on here. There's the issue of raw. If it can be eaten raw, it's not subject to the issue of bishul akum.
It has to be that condition too.
That condition has been, if it can't be eaten raw, it's subject to bishul akum in general. It's subject, unless it's a junk food. Now you have to understand what's called that junk food that will not go on the table of the king. But if it's not a junk food, that food, if it can't be eaten raw, would be subject to the prohibition. But I want to say, Oren, the Sfardim have, by the way, a strict and another.
Yes, that's good spot.
They have a stricter standard than the Ashkenazim when it comes to these laws of Bishul Akum. Because Ashkenazim hold it's enough, meaning, let's say someone has a maid in the house and tonight you want chicken for supper, right? So for the Ashkenazim, it's enough. They just put on the fire. You just put on the fire. Ashkenazim, it's enough. Just put on the fire. Sfardim say it's not about putting on the fire. It's about being actively involved in the cooking. You have to mix the food. You have to put the food on, right? That's why you'll see in a lot of some Ashkenaz restaurant. What do you say?
Big spices, you add spices.
But you're involved in the cooking.
Yeah.
Not just put the spices on beforehand. While it's on the, it's on the. Right. You have to be involved. That's why some of the Sfardim are strict when they go to an Ashkenaz. A lot of the restaurants have Ashkenaz standards, and it's a problem for Sfardim. Rabbi Fadi Yosef has a letter in the Yechavedat that he has a leniency for Sfardim going to Ashkenaz restaurants. It doesn't mean it's not that it's not better to go to Sephardi restaurants, but but there is room to be lenient in a restaurant that's doing Ashkenaz standards. Today's day and age, the Sephardi community is becoming much stronger. He wrote that 30 years ago. Maybe I don't know if you need to rely on it. Of course if you're in a place that's Ashkenaz, you don't have Sephardi, but maybe it's like if you have opportunity to go to a Sephardi restaurant and you have opportunity, maybe you should take that standard. Why should you use that leniency? But there is a leniency out there. I mean, the Sephardi, no, that most of the restaurants are not Sephardi standards. Ashkenaz, the OU is not Sephardi standards. You know what I'm saying? And you have all the goyim working in the right. One of the leniencies that I think they use, once we're on the subject, is because even though in halacha the law is that in your house the maid cannot be cooking the food for you, right? You took care of everything is kosher. It's your house. Your wife made sure that everything is 100%. She's involved in the shopping. Everything's kosher. But you still can't, which I think in the community needs more education. I think a lot of people. I'm speculating. I haven't done a survey. Mark is going to be helping. Going to be talking to everybody about it. That I think in the community, I don't think everyone is educated enough regarding the maid, and I think a lot of people, the maid is making.
My maid doesn't cook one.
Okay, that's you, but I don't think everyone is that your. I have a close relative of mine that teaches in Hillel. In Deal, Ashkenaz relative of mine, but when she hears about how.
Oh, there's some Sephardics that the wife doesn't cook it.
Right, I'm saying,
Yeah.
but the point
They
is,
cook nothing.
but the point is, they're not
Friday
even.
night, they mix the whole dinner.
But I'm saying, but they don't even meet the Ashkenaz standard.
Right.
That's my problem.
They're
Let them
tenants.
let them meet the Ashkenaz standards. All the people, see, we first have to can't go for the gold first. You got to go for the
Yeah.
silver medal first. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying it's important to educate the people. People they don't know better. But the reason for the restaurant, one of the things that there's different. The fact there is an Ashkenaz opinion makes meaning he recognized there is such an opinion. It's not like it's not an opinion, but we don't generally rely on it. But there is an opinion out there that says that when they're cooking, if they're doing it as a worker for you, right? Let's say which would technically be an allowance for the maid, but we don't rely. I mean, halacha we don't accept it, but it is an opinion. Not all opinions that we don't accept, we don't recognize as an opinion. We might not say that we don't follow that opinion, but it doesn't mean it's not an opinion that maybe we could join with some other. Sometimes Rav Avadi will take multiple things, put them together, and say maybe we could, what I recall, he said in Yechavedat, since there's an opinion that says that when they're doing it for you, they're working for you, that you don't feel that affinity, if that's the right word, you don't feel that appreciation so much for them because you're paying them, they're working for you. When a non-Jew goes ahead and he does cook something for you, right, Adam? And you don't, and they're not working for you, and you feel appreciation. They did something, my neighbor did something for me. I feel a certain type of, but when they're getting paid for that, they're working for me. So you don't feel, I mean, the whole issue behind the Bishul Akum, the main reason for the prohibition is because I shouldn't have that developed that appreciation for the non-Jew, but they cooked for me, right? So, and by the way, they did not do this prohibition on commercial bread, right? Bread, technically, you want to buy an Italian bread, Peter. It says OU. It was not cooked by a Jew. It's not baked by a Jew. The OU on the Italian bread only says that this bread, the ingredients are kosher, but it's not pat Yisrael. It's not baked by a Jew. Some bread said pat Yisrael, but it doesn't say pat Yisrael. When these commercial, now if you're buying in a nice kosher bakery, then mom and pop bakery, Jewish bakery, it's obviously most probably everything in there is pat Yisrael. But when you're buying from a supermarket and it says OU, that's not pat Yisrael. But yet the rabbis allowed you to buy that bread. If they would be selling in the supermarket chicken, that the OU would say everything was cooked kosher, you wouldn't be able to eat it if it was cooked by a non-Jew. But if they're selling bread that everything is all the ingredients kosher, they said they didn't extend the prohibition to commercial bread. Why? Because bread.
You go to Ori's and there's, I don't buy it, but there's chicken made. I don't know what it is.
Because in Uri's there has to be a mashkiach,
Okay.
and then therefore the mashkiach's job in Uri's
But
now
what
he
you know the household?
now he has to the mashkiach in Uri's would have to have. I would think he should be on the Sephardi standards. It's a Sephardi owned store, right? So therefore he would have to actually put the Jew putting the food on, right? Is that happening or not? Is he just are they relying on Ashkenaz standards? Because whatever allowance in a restaurant, are they doing that? I don't know what, I mean, we could ask Mr. Uri. I don't know Mr. Uri, but you could go ahead and, what is the standard that they're using over there? It has to be at least Ashkenaz standard. Doesn't make sense to me that they're not, that at least Ashkenaz standard. Supposedly, I think there is a hashgacha. Again, I don't know exactly how far the hashgacha, what the hashgacha exactly on in Uri's. So that is the story. So now to answer your question, Oren, is that bread is different because bread is a basic staple of life. So the rabbis did not want to extend. You're traveling, you're going somewhere, you need to eat. So you have as long as the bakery, that they're not smearing the oven with pig fat or not kosher, meat animal fat when they're making the bread. As long as everything is just see the old time, everything is kosher, right? Right. You see, even I think in Israel, when you see those Arab places and people, and they even have hashgacha. Some of these places, they have hashgacha, but Arab owned. So what are they saying of what? Right? Is there such right? I think what I recall in Israel has hashgacha.
That's the name of
It's a bakery.
It's a family. It's like they have a chain now. And everything.
But
But some of the cook on Shabbat.
No, the clothes.
On Photoshop?
I know that they have.
But no. Some bakeries, they get in the old days they would give hashgacha, but they would say maybe you don't eat the bread in the first year, don't eat wait till Sunday, whatever it was. If they open, whatever they did certain things. But the rabbi, you're traveling, you need to eat. So if you go to, so the rabbis did not want to extend this program as long as you know the ingredients, everything is kosher on the bread. If it's commercial, so since it's commercial, I don't feel that it's not. But if it's my neighbor is a non-Jew, and he has a bread maker, and he has a special toast maker, whatever you call it, and he only uses it, he never uses it for anything else, right? And let's say he just bought it. He just, Rabbi, I just bought it. It's out of the box. And here's I have some, and I'm gonna and here's some and I'm gonna make it for you. So that's called pat balabayit. That's called private bread. That's not called pat nachtum. There's the baker's bread,
Right.
and then there's
Homemade.
and home baked. So home baked bread by a non-Jew,
Yeah.
you can't eat. It doesn't make it. Everything is perfectly. You have a
Why?
neighbor. Why?
So
That's
you're
the
gonna
same.
entitle.
Exactly.
And
That-
indebted to them,
exactly. And that closeness that leads from food.
like breaking bread with the goy.
Right. So that would be an issue. But if it's commercial bread, every Italian bread, it's commercial bread. You got an OU on the deal. That's OU is only saying it's kosher ingredients and it's commercial bread. So they never extended.
What if there's no OU and you see the guy baking the bread and there's flour, water, and he puts it up?
Where in his house or in the
No,
store? So
Store.
So
No OU.
no OU. So maybe you became the OU. Maybe if you became the OU, you're the mashgiach. Who's the OU in your house? Your wife. You're the OU. Again, remember, the best kashrut is the house.
So conceptually, you could be a mashgiach outside of the,
Right, but as long as you also have sometimes you have to know what
you have to know what's kosher.
what's kosher, what the standard was. Was the oven used within 24 hours for not kosher food? You know, there are different things that people have to be aware of. But if all things remain equal, technically you were, there was a store once on the Lower East Side that the issue was they sold eggs. They made eggs also, and the non-Jewish person, the Spanish person who worked there, would turn the fire on to make the eggs and turn it off. And I said, it can't be done, so I had to step in and educate the people because you can't have, it's true, it's a kosher, it's owned by Jews, and it's a kosher rest, whatever was going on, whatever they were selling there, but they had a little,
No.
because I saw because they had it. It wasn't a restaurant. It's a bakery, and the bakery has bakery goods in the front, and they also had they made eggs,
Right there.
like an electric grill, and they don't want to leave it on the whole time. They don't want to leave the electric.
You watch the guy.
No. So I'm buying bread, and I see what's going on. I see someone comes in, they want eggs, and I see the Spanish lady turning it on. And the Spanish lady turned, and it was, and I asked, if they kept the fire always on a little bit, meaning could only turn lower and higher, then it's one thing. But it seemed to me that it was off.
You went to the owner.
So I spoke to the owner about it. I said, whatever, you gotta,
Step it up.
he didn't realize,
And
I hope he followed. I hope he. No, I never ate the eggs there. I only was eating the bread there. You know what I'm saying? But you're right. It's a big question. It's not.
So Rabbi, on that note, who took the fire over here?
There's a man who comes here at 5:30 in the morning and turns on the fire.
Oh, fire.
So there's someone that's responsible. Right. But you know what? It's always good to ask Haron. Ask him who's the one who turns on the fire. It's always good to be on top of things. You know what I'm saying? The fact that someone you always see. What happens when sometimes the lady downstairs, if I recall correctly, if the guy is not here, they'll call me over. They'll call someone. Sometimes they'll call a Jewish person over. They're instructed to do that. But still, you still got to be on top of things. Just make sure to maintain things properly and so on and so forth. So that's what Oren, thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah.
You ate a lot. Hey, now you're back. Now, so that's what the Gemara says. He wanted to teach us. So the Gemara said, and the point why he wanted to teach us this law. Why did he say, get me the water that was cooked by a guy? If let's right? So someone say he wanted to teach. Sometimes a rabbi says something to teach you a law. He could say, he could tell the story, get me what was cooked by a Jew. And by the way, another rabbi, the Gemara is going to say there's another rabbi who heard that story and said and was upset. He says, you know what? You should not have done that. You should not have asked your servant to get your water that was cooked by a Gentile. So the Gemara shoots back. What's the problem? It's not subject to the laws of Bishul Akum. If it was cooked by the Gentile, the water, since it could be eaten edible, it's not a problem. Why are you critical of what the rabbi did? I mean, there's another rabbi that heard about it and was makbid. They said, no, that's not correct. But he says, I disagree with this rabbi. This rabbi, the way the rabbi is acting, I feel is wrong. I feel that a rabbi should not do that. So the Gemara says, what's the problem? The Gemara says, because this other rabbi held that a rabbi has held to a higher standard. That even though the average person is allowed to go ahead and have water cooked by the maid, but the rabbi, you're an Adam Chashuv. If the rabbi uses water, that's food, that's even though it's able to be eaten raw, but if you're going to be using the leniency, the allowance of since it can be eaten raw, you can have the goy do it. So people a lot of times say, if the rabbi does that, I could even do. They'll even be lenient on something that the rabbi wouldn't be lenient. But they say if the rabbi is able to have something cooked by a Gentile, even they're not going to always get it and say, oh, that's because it was raw. You eat it raw. The rabbi said,
vegetables for the rabbi.
Right,
Carrots.
right. Apples, carrots. Therefore, he held, but the other rabbi said no. He held that no. The fact that I'm a rabbi does not mean that I'm held. I said, but there is something when you have a neighborhood, but not b'nei Torah. Sometimes when people are not learned, so therefore sometimes you don't want to give certain allowances to the community because once they give them that allowance, they'll take it further. But as an individual, the rabbi he felt I don't have to be held to a higher standard. Okay, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. We had a special surprise today, and have a great day, everybody. Yes, looking forward. We have a 9:30 Parsha, the weekly Parsha 9:30, what do you call Zoom, for about a half hour every Thursday night. So anybody ever wants to join, Adam can give details. All right.
What time? What time?
9:30. It's 9:30.
9:30. 9:30
Okay.
to 10.
Have a great day, everybody. Maybe I'll tell Adam, maybe Adam will send to the chat if anybody wants to join. Okay, have a great day. Kevin, doctor, thank you for coming. Take care, Seth. Take care, Ralph. Great day. See you tomorrow.